Going on then in the exposition on page 239 toward the bottom there, actually moving on to the next page, we have the meaning of this. And so he says, from self-appearances of all Tathagatas, the self-arising compassion manifests as the Buddha's wisdom. The awareness beings who have subdued all karma and passions tame the 6 individual classes of beings as the 6 Buddhas. So as the Buddha himself then tames is the word that he used. Now we know that the Buddha said, I can't do this for you, you have to do it yourself. So he's doing the teachings, providing the resources that we need in that sense in order to do that for ourselves. And then he talks about 4 ways to tame. And from the brief explanation on page 241 at the bottom of the second paragraph there before the quote, he lists the 4 ways to tame. By merit, by fully actualizing all meanings, by great magic, and by great intelligence. And so then have at the bottom the extensive explanation. So taming through the deeds of fully endowed great merit of the enlightened body, taming directly through the great clairvoyance of the enlightened mind, taming through the inconceivably great miracles, and taming through the intelligence that reveals the 5 vehicles of enlightened speech. So the first one then, taming through the enlightened body, he talks about 8 miraculous deeds and so forth, which refers to remaining deeds of transferring from Tashita. Some claim that there are only 12 deeds, but here that number is not final, since it is taught that the Buddha revealed countless magical manifestations. So because he had these countless manifestations, it goes beyond just the 12. And so there are these additional deeds that can be done. The second one is taming through the enlightened mind, referring to clairvoyance here. And so the first one is through the Buddha's clairvoyance of knowing previous births. And then down towards the bottom, next to last line on that page, the clairvoyance of knowing the minds of others is the second one. On the next page, the first full paragraph, talking about the magical eye of wisdom, always seeing the pure lands and impure realms. So this is the clairvoyance of divine vision. And then the fourth one is through magical hearing. Each nuance of sound is the clairvoyance of divine hearing. And then, the fifth one is accomplishing their needs. And this is the clairvoyance of magical manifestations. And those are cleansed without exception. And finally, the sixth one is that Samattabhadra's activity is naturally complete. And that is the clairvoyance of the exhaustion of the contaminants. So these are the 6 great states of clairvoyance. The next topic, the third one, is taming through great miracles. And so here it says the manifestations of the kayas will be inconceivable. So there's an unlimited number of potential kayas that can come. And the enlightened mind accomplishes the benefit of others through the twofold wisdom knowledge of the nature as it is and as it appears is inconceivable. Down the last 4 lines on the page, diverse and distinctive manifestations, peaceful, wrathful, and so forth, appear in perfect harmony with the person's phenomena and reveal inconceivable faces that each observer thinks appears to him or her alone out of loving kindness. So we see these as appearing directly to us to meet our particular needs. On page 244, the last paragraph on the page, from a single kaya, inconceivable numbers, but from a single kaya, inconceivable faces will appear. Phenomena are the inconceivable sound of a wisdom's enlightened speech, heard congruent with the respective languages of sentient beings. So it is said that we can understand regardless of our particular language. And then innumerable manifestations will appear to tame in the 10 directions by whatever means are necessary. So this sounds pretty powerful in this case, that this can go beyond just giving teachings and then it depends on us to do something. It almost sounds like the taming could be imposed upon us or benefit us. But according to other sources, we need to rely on our own resolve to do this, to follow the guidelines that are being provided to us, the teachings and so forth, in order to actualize that taming, if you will. Number 4, at the top of the next page, 245, is taming through enlightened speech. And there are some definitions that he gives here in the middle of the page. Yana is vehicle, and in the collection of sutras it states a vehicle is like the sky or like a celestial palace. The supreme vehicle brings the city of joyful bliss. Whoever embarks upon it will transport all beings beyond sorrow. The beyond sorrow is a phrase that we see quite a bit in the description of enlightenment. And so then he makes some distinctions here among these. And so first he gives a kind of general distinction. The compassion of a Buddha is shown in whatever way is necessary to tame passions in the mind streams of sentient beings. On occasion, the Buddha taught that from the perspective of the result, that there is only one vehicle. And so then he goes through a series of quotes and comments here that talks about the number of vehicles. So in the glorious Tantra, the exhaustion of 4 elements, it states, since there are the doctrines of cause and result, there are also 2 vehicles. And then the primordial lamp, since there are gradual mental levels of the greater and lesser, the enumeration of the vehicles is in accord with that. If synthesized, there are 2, once again. Then based on the distinction of lesser, middle, greater, it is taught that there are 3. The hearers, solitary realizers, and the great vehicle. And in the Secret Vital Essence, it states, based on the outer, inner levels, it is taught that there are 3 vehicles of outer, inner, and secret. It's a little different descriptions here. In addition, it is taught that there are 3 causal vehicles and 1 resultant, making 4. In the next page, just above the middle, in the all-creating monarch, it states the 6 vehicles of achieving certainty. And then from the gathering of mandalas, it talks about 7, from greatest of space, 8 vehicles. In the all-creating monarch, 9 vehicles. Another one, there are 16 vehicles, and so forth. So he says then, about a third of the way down on 249, vehicle is merely a designation lacking true existence. So it's important to keep those things in mind whenever we read these and we start looking at it in literal ways, that these are only convenient designations. Okay? They lack true existence. In short, then, he says, everything appears only to the stages of the mind. There is no other so-called vehicle. And then he goes on to the specific designations, of which there are 5. So he starts first with the vehicle of gods and humans. So at the top of 250, the vehicle of humans means the vehicle of gods. The vehicle of humans, the 10 non-virtues are abandoned and the 10 virtues practiced. The 10 virtues are abandoning the 10 non-virtues. For the vehicle of gods, the 6 realms, the form realms and the formless realms are all included. So then we go down to the vehicle of the hearers, basically the monks and nuns, the Shravakas. For the ground, the Shravakas assert the 3 trainings, the selflessness and lack of fixation upon oneself in terms of the aggregates. The 3 trainings, of course, are the ethics, meditation, and wisdom that we have used in our courses. And then for the path, the paths of accumulation, the 4 applications of mindfulness, the 4 perfectly correct abandonments, and the 4 miraculous legs, and the path of unification are included, the path of seeing, the path of meditation, and then the result, which would be the path of no more learning. And one abides in the space of tranquility, acceptance and rejection based on the 4 Noble Truths, and would become an arhat as a stream enterer, a one-time returner and a non-returner that is fully actualized. So for the vehicle of the hearers here, he's going through some of the basic kinds of teachings that are included in that tradition. What is sometimes referred to as the Hinayana tradition, but there's 2 main branches, 2 main parts of that tradition. And so then he goes on into the second of those, the third of his overall breakdown of 5, the vehicle of solitary realizers, or the yogins. So referred to as Prateka Buddhas, or just Prateka, is an individual. A Buddha means fully awakened. So they do this without relying upon oral instructions received from a master, but naturally giving rise to the realization of the path within one's mind stream. The state of awakening is actualized. So they practice in 3 ways: large, small groups, and alone. For the ground, the outer and inner phenomena are based on dependent origination, and then reversing the process. So the dependent origination talks about where it originates and where we wind up, and so the solution to that problem is to reverse the process. The state beyond sorrow will be attained, having realized the selflessness of person and the lack of true inherent existence. The path involves the 37 doctrines of awakening. That's not the same as the 37 Bodhisattva practices. They are listed in the appendix. Similar to the meditation of the hearers, nevertheless, this path is superior because of the meditation on dependent origination. The result is solitary realizers teach through indication so that others can understand and achieve nirvana. The 4th vehicle then in this particular organization is the vehicle of the Bodhisattvas. So a Bodhisattva means an awakened being, one who has the capacity to quell through splendor those who rely upon the lesser approach of to achieve awakening. So in the collection of sutras it states greatness of heart, generosity, and great heroism, donning excellent armor and subduing the root cause for demons. These are the causes that result in what is called a bodhisattva. So the ground is to realize the apparent phenomena of samsara and enlightenment are without true inherent existence, like a reflection. The emptiness of self, the emptiness of phenomena. The path is the 37 doctrines and the 6 or 10 transcendental perfections. So there's the 6 perfections and there's another version of the 10 perfections. The 10 add to the original 6 skillful means, strength, aspiration, and wisdom. The perfection of the wisdom that's a part of the 6. The result is to abide on the 11th ground of all-pervading light, so this would be the 11th bhumi in some classifications, as a fully awakened Buddha. In terms of the 2 truths, the relative truth means the appearances of phenomena, and genuine truth, so ordinary and ultimate truth. Ultimate truth is the complete pacification of the nature of mind and phenomena. And then he breaks it down a little bit more into some of the different schools associated with this. And so he begins with the Sotantrika middle way school, which holds that all phenomena appear according to relative truth, yet ultimately, when analyzed, have no true inherent existence. So in our ordinary life, things appear, and we treat them as if they're ordinary things and so forth. But ultimately, if we really understand the true nature of all of these things, self and other, then we recognize none of them have any true inherent existence whatsoever. And then he talks about the Prasangika as the middle way school, and he holds that whether analyzed or not, all phenomena are always thoroughly free from elaboration and theories, ineffable. Okay? So you hold to relative reality as being substantial, but I cannot accept even the relative. So the Prasangikas, especially the hardcore Prasangikas, basically say you can't say anything about anything because it's all in the form of something relative. It all lacks inherent existence. So there's no point in trying to make philosophical propositions about any of this. In the root of prajna, going down here to the larger paragraph, the one who has revealed that the state of peace, the origin of dependent arising, is unceasing, unborn, not negated, not eternal, not coming, not going, not different, and not similar, and that all elaborations are thoroughly pacified, is the fully perfected Buddha. So when you can see all of those, understand those, and it is what you are in terms of how you see and understand things, then you become a fully perfected Buddha. So then he goes on to note that it is the incorrect and correct relative. So the incorrect relative is like a moon's reflection, whereas the correct relative is like a moon in the sky. So the different levels of relative in this understanding. Under observation, the appearances of the incorrect and correct seem equal, and then carefully examined, ultimately the fact that they both lack true inherent existence is also equal. Hence, samsara and enlightenment are equally abide in the nature of evenness. Continuing on page 256, about the middle of the page, he quotes from The Two Truths of the Middle Way. In this second set of lines here, the pacification of the unborn and all elaboration indicates genuine truth from the Prasangika point of view. Given that this is from the perspective of the mind, this level is explained as the fully qualified relative truth and genuine truth that is designated. It is, but it's you can't articulate it. It's ineffable. Now, one of the things, if we look at that and the things that we've talked about before, Prasangika is usually talked about in the path of Tantra, Vajrayana, as opposed in terms of Mahayana as it's articulated here. What isn't mentioned is Shentong, or Yogacarya. And so that has been left out of his descriptions. So then he goes on to the secret of the vehicle of secret mantra with Vajrayana, and talks about the outer and inner tantras. So beginning with the inner tantras, there are three of those. We're familiar with this. The Kriya Tantra emphasizes cleanliness and bathing, so it is referred to as Action Tantra. Then the ground of this is realizing that phenomena lack true existence, the wisdom being is viewed as a king, and the support through which the cities are received. And so part of these three outer tantras is the difference in how you look at the particular deity. So when you look at them as being superior, that's the Kriya Tantra. And then we'll look at them as being other levels here in each of these. The ground, oops, that's the ground we just did. No. Yeah. So the ground is by realizing that phenomena lack true existence, the wisdom being viewed as a king, and the support through which the cities are received. Then the path is to rely upon generating the deity, making offerings, and realizing the nature as it is, while maintaining cleanliness and austerity. After 16 human lifetimes, the result of awakening as a Buddha will be attained. So we see ourselves as ourselves, and the deity is kind of a lord. It's kind of a lord and servant type of relationship. The next one is the Upa Tantra. So the upaya means conduct according to the kriya, and meditation according to the yoga level. So this is kind of a middle level in between with elements of both. So the ground is realizing the prajna that knows there is no true inherent existence, along with the method of believing that oneself as the samaya being and the deity as the wisdom being are equal. So us as the meditator and the deity as the wisdom being, we're both equal, and the desired cities will be attained. The path is by meditating in this way and practicing cleanliness according to the kriya. So that's the part that goes back to the kriya level. After 7 human lifetimes, the result of liberation will occur. So in Upa it is held that by viewing oneself and the deity as equal, with the hope that the siddhi will be bestowed, then liberation will occur. The third one then on the next page, 258, is the Yoga Tantra. So yoga refers to meditation with the conduct that supports this. So the ground is abiding with the prajna that knows the lack of true existence, visualizing oneself as the deity. So now they're not separate, but in fact oneself. And the wisdom deity is like water poured into water. It constitutes the basis. The path is by meditating in this way, along with the conduct of extreme cleanliness. The result of liberation will occur after 3 human lifetimes. Now, in general, these 3 are not taught in this way in Tibet. There are some lineages that have kind of added those back in a little bit more, but generally they're not taught, at least in that way. Some of the deity practices that come from this are taught. Those would include peaceful deities for the most part, single figures for the most part, and so forth, non-wrathful versions. And so those fit generally into this category, but the teachings usually don't emphasize that purity or cleanliness aspect of those 3 as they're more generally articulated. But what is taught are the inner tantras, the highest yoga tantras. And so here there are some differences in the classifications between the Nyingma school and the Sarma schools, the new schools, and how they articulate the names of these different categories and what they represent. And in here, Longchenpa is overlapping and mixing those together just a little bit compared to some other versions. So if this seems a little bit confusing, that may be the reason. So the first one we have is the Mahayana Yoga Tantra. And so Mahayoga emphasizes liberation through the generation practice of method and prajna, and primarily through the vital winds. Now, most forms don't get into the vital winds much in the generation stage practice, but here he mentions that. The ground is primordially pure mandala of deities, in vital winds and so forth. The path is the corresponding meditation. The result will be liberation in that very lifetime. So here he's including both generation and completion stage practices. So then the next one he refers to as Mother Tantra or Anu Yoga. And so here we have the completion stage of prajna is non-dual space and wisdom. So here's where usually the wisdom, the vital winds and so forth is emphasized. So the prajna is non-dual space and wisdom. The ground is the primordially pure intrinsic nature of the deity of non-dual space and wisdom, and the path is the meditation upon this. The result is that in that lifetime, the kaya of exaltation will be actualized. So, let me go on to the non-dual first and come back to this. Ati Yoga is the Nyingma version of this. Ati is the very nature of the unborn, or the essence of everything. Phenomena are primordially awakened. The ground is that the phenomena comprise the appearances of samsara and enlightenment, and are, by nature, primordially awakened. Always been there. The path is the indivisibility of generation and completion stages, transcending hope and fear, acceptance and rejection. The result is to fully abide upon the ground of the spontaneously perfect samattabhadra in the present moment. So what we typically see in terms of classifications of these is in the Sarma schools, the new schools, the Kagyu, the Sakya, the Gelugpa, and so forth. We see in there this division of father, mother, and non-dual tantras. In that, the emphasis in the father tantras is not as articulated here on the generation stage per se, but on the method. So it's method versus wisdom. And the mother tantras tend to focus more on wisdom, and non-dual tantras in that system are a balance between the two. Now, in my experience of looking at these different tantras, ones that are classified in these different categories, there's not a dramatically strong difference between what is emphasized in these things. They all include generation stage things. They all include various degrees of these completion stage things and so forth. And they all have some degree of balance. So these are somewhat subtle. In the Nyingma tradition, they look at it a little bit differently, and he included the topics in here, the Mahayoga Tantra and the Anu Tantra and the Ati Yoga Tantra. But the emphasis of the first one is on the generation stage, clearly. The second one is clearly more of a focus on the completion stage practices, although in Nyingma they don't really emphasize completion stage practices all that much. And then the Ati Yoga. So they tend more to do generation stage and go into the Ati Yoga with a little bit of the other mixed in, but that's not, there isn't a great deal of emphasis on that. So those are slight differences in the way some of these things get classified. Another point of confusion that hopefully I can clarify here is that when we talk about the generation stage in this way and the completion stage in this way, that's not the same as when we talk about generation and completion as the dissolution process in a practice. So in a sadhana practice, we talk about generating the deity, and then we talk about the dissolution of the deity. So we're using the same words, but they have different meanings. So it's important to keep that separate. So sometimes I'll talk about the generation stage versus the generation phase, and the completion stage as opposed to the completion stage. So in that case, both the completion, the generation and completion phase are a part of the generation stage. So get the idea there. So we generate the deity, we dissolve the deity into emptiness, and we do the meditation. But that's still a generation stage practice. Okay? So those are the differences that are included among that. Then in the exposition part here on page 260, he talks about various divisions, antidotes, and the meaning. So first, even all fully endowed teachings of the Nirmanakaya are revealed within the 5 vehicles to tame all sentient beings. There are 10 virtues, the 4 concentrations, and the 4 states of formlessness. By meditating on the 4 truths with acceptance and rejection, 37 branches of awakening, realizing the state of a form destroyer, is the vehicle of the hearers. By meditating upon deepened arising in the 5 paths to arrive at the ground of supreme wish-fulfilling exaltation, is the vehicle of the solitary realizers. to realize twofold selflessness, practice the 10 paramitas, and actualize the state of Buddhahood is the vehicle of the Bodhisattvas. So that's basically a summary of what was included in the other section there. To recognize phenomena as the three mandalas and meditate on the profound path, the attainment of liberation in that lifetime is the vehicle of the unsurpassed secret mantra, or Vajrayana. So, due to conceptual ignorance, then, various passions are generated. And then the antidotes for all three baskets, the Vinaya Sutra and Abhidharma, and mantra, that serves as the antidotes for all three poisons, there are 84,000 categories of teachings. So when we talk about the 84,000 ways of achieving enlightenment, this is what is being referred to here. Manifesting as self-occurring wisdom according to the faculties of those to be tamed. So there's something for everybody. You may just have to find exactly what that is. On the vehicle of the hearers, the selflessness of fixation and the genuine truth of partless particles can be understood. Mind is also understood to be selfless, which becomes the antidote for fixating upon the aggregates as an existing self. On the vehicle of solitary realizers, the outer appearance of objects is ultimately non-existent, even as partless particles, like the reflection in a pond. If ignorance is arrested, the wheel of existence will be reversed. Then the selflessness of the person is realized, and the selflessness of outer and inner phenomena is partially realized. Meditating upon the inner origination of dependent arising, the antidote of selflessness of phenomena is applied. Having realized the selflessness of the person and partial selflessness of phenomena, bodhisattvas realize a meditative antidote is non-existent. So, they haven't found the complete solution here, basically. On the vehicle of bodhisattvas, twofold selflessness is fully realized. The vehicle of gods and humans teaches that all positive and negative karmic causes and karmic results will never be thwarted. In the 100-fold karma, everyone must experience the maturity of those results. In addition, it is necessary to rely upon the vehicle of gods and humans in order to accomplish liberation. So that is still an important aspect of this. On page 262, whoever has the correct view will not fall to lower realms. So as long as we have the right view, we'll be okay. Then by knowing that the three doors, body, speech, and mind, are primordially the three mandalas, there are no ordinary appearances. So the karmic causes and karmic results of fixating upon material substance and characteristics will have no effect on the body, no effect on speech, and no effect on the mind. So the ultimate emptiness is realized on the supreme vehicle of unsurpassed mantra. So he's building a case for that as being the supreme of all of these different vehicles, if you will. So then he goes into a little more detail here. The intrinsic nature of samsara as the nature of phenomena. So here there are two main categories, and in this first one he looks at different parts of this. So 6 different parts based on ignorance. Confused appearances are manifestations of the mind. Confused thoughts are the play of wisdom. So there are 4 ways to tame. And concerning the outer and inner impure phenomena, the dreamlike confused phenomena of the world, unaware of the way things abide as primordially awakened, one is shrouded by this slumber of ignorance. Conceptual duality, outer objects and sentient beings limitlessly appear. So the root cause of confusion, confused perception emerges. Outer and inner dependent arising of sentient beings revolve like the rotation of a carriage wheel. Samsara, round and round and round. And where we stop, nobody knows. Happiness and sorrow are then experienced. So although appearing as such, this never departs from being the intrinsic nature of samsara as the great primordially liberated nature of phenomena, the perfection of evenness. This is the nature of evenness, emptiness. In the King of Samadhi, the third line there, the totality of existence is primordially empty. So the moment samsara appears, it is ultimately non-existence, merely appears as a duality, like dreams and a dreamer, neither of which exist separately. Can't have dreams without a dreamer. You have to have a dreamer to have dreams. There is no self and no other. Because of this, because this is the mind appearing as such. So within our mind, things appear as us and other. Okay? But it's only within our mind, the way that it appears. If this mind sees external objects as real, it is mistaken. Now, many sources indicate that, in fact, there may be real things out there, but everything we actually experience, seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, touching, everything occurs in our mind. And so that is our reality. So the idea is to realize that. When samsara appears, this nature is perfectly pure, a primordial single mode of being, wisdom mind, dharmakaya, and unity of samsara and enlightenment. The paragraph in the middle of the page, mind grasps to both self and all others as separate. Ultimately, this is non-existent. If one attempted to discover where this incorrect understanding exists, not even the subtlest aspect of phenomena would be found to exist. Hence, there is no nature of phenomena more profound than this. In Master Padma's teaching on the union of Buddha, once concepts are understood to be the nature of phenomena, there is no other space of phenomena to meditate upon. Just the concept. Okay? And then at the top of the next page, 265, these dualistic appearances are dreamlike appearances. Ultimately, this has never been otherwise. And then in the middle of the page, with dualistic confused appearances, the resultant proliferation of this is how appearances connect from one moment to the next. Although there seems to be a continuity, if analyzed, it does not exist. So he's reflecting here back on some of those earlier philosophical schools. Although there seems to be a continuity, if analyzed, it does not exist. The nature of awareness is the basic space of phenomena. There is no continuity since the characteristics are fleeting and fragmented. They have no inherent existence. If the moment of the present is analyzed, not even a mere instant actually exists. Even an instant does not inherently exist. This manner of abiding is the very nature of awareness, primordial, perfectly pure basic space of phenomena, like the sky. So that metaphor of the sky, or occasionally they use the word space, because the word space and sky are the same in Tibetan, I understand. But those are used as a metaphor to just explain the lack of any inherent existence. On 266 at the top, the nature of all mental perceptions is that they are the domain of primordial awakening. Manifestations arise and are mastered as the originally pure nature of phenomena, self-appearing wisdom utilizing wisdom itself. The entire continuum of concepts arises as the five poisons are the play of wisdom. So all of these things that arise are considered the play of wisdom. Why? Because the wisdom itself has no characteristics. Okay? So the characteristics aspect is considered to be another aspect, if you will, of mind. And this is the perfectly pure, unsurpassed, supreme vehicle. The second part then, at the bottom of the page, how the intrinsic nature of phenomena is ineffable. And then the first complete paragraph on 267. First, based on the four individual vehicles, renunciation is generated. When renunciation through those vehicles is final, by then encountering the natural great perfection, one will then abide on the ground of Buddha. That transcends the exertion of accepting and rejecting. So the great perfection is often described as self-liberating. So there's no effort involved. So we don't have to do anything in terms of accepting or rejecting. We just recognize it as it is. And then down in the middle of the page here, second, within the fundamental nature that is inherently non-existent, anything can seem to exist. Doesn't mean it is, but it seems to. And it gives an example of the clouds that amass and then disappear. Okay, they seem to exist, but they don't. And it goes through, gives a bunch of other examples here of a magician, reflection in the water, a mirage, a mirror, and so forth. So things appear to exist in all of those cases, but we know that they do not. So phenomena lack true inherent existence, yet appear. It must be understood that the nature, like a magical manifestation, exists nowhere. Third, a Buddha continuously abides as the three kayas, free from meeting and parting, and will not pass into nirvana. Teachings will also never vanish, since they are present throughout the three times. So this view, Dzogchen view, is beyond time, which is sometimes referred to as the fourth time, beyond present, past, future. And so it goes beyond all of those things, so it can't come, it can't go. So we might say it's permanent, but even that word is full of connotations that could be problematic. So we might say it's not permanent, nor not permanent. At the top of 269, Buddha's intrinsic nature as the three kayas is permanent and always abiding. So he's willing to use the word here, even though it can be a little problematic. Down just below the middle of the page, below the quotes there, in some scriptures, the Dharmakaya and Sambhogakaya are held to be permanent. The Nirmanakaya originates from them and appears, but does not inherently exist. It is therefore held to be permanent only as the nature of phenomena, which is beyond permanence or impermanence, what I was referring to there. In this way, spontaneously present emanations appear, to tame all ignorant sentient beings and to bring them to maturity and liberation. So on the top of page 270, at the bottom of the first paragraph, Buddhas are always engaged in spontaneous presence. So then down below the quotes here, fourth, the basket of the Vinaya emphasizes the training of surpassing discipline. So here below the first quote, Sutra emphasizes the training of the surpassing mind. And then below the next quote, Abhidharma emphasizes the training of surpassing prajna. So the bottom paragraph, Kriya Tantra emphasizes bathing in cleanliness as well as samayas of body and speech. Conduct that is in accord with the action tantra and the view according to Yoga Tantra is Upa Tantra. So that which emphasizes meditation is the supreme accomplishment through Yoga Tantra. The tantras of enlightened bodies, such as Yamantaka, emphasize the generation stage. Tantras of enlightened speech, such as Guhyagarbha, emphasize completion stage of prajna. And the tantras of enlightened mind, such as Vajraharuka, teach the indivisible intrinsic nature. All extremely renowned sacred doctrines that emanate from this intrinsic nature of secret essence. So I think I misspoke a little bit before we talked about generation and completion stages. The completion stages in the Sarma schools are focused sometimes in the Tantras on the wisdom aspect. But they also talk about the completion stage as the Tsa Lung, the body with the channels, winds, and drops, and so forth. So the terms get used in multiple ways there. Then fifth, down below the quote on page 271, the natural state, natural secret of this secret essence, the fundamental nature of phenomena, is the basis for all 6 classes of Tantra and the 3 baskets, as well as their source. On the top of 272, sixth, this reveals how the 5 vehicles are established and the objects, namely phenomena of samsara and enlightenment, lack true inherent existence and are merely designated through labels. It is taught by the Buddha that these unceasing appearances themselves are temporarily placed in the category of meaning of relative truth, labeled so that genuine fundamental nature could be comprehended. So it does help sometimes to have labels, to have words, to have concepts that we can use to help with our understanding. It's just that there is some risk, as the Prasangikas point out continuously, that we may take those to be real, but they're not. So we have to be careful about that. In fact, those are actually non-existent. When the term sky is expressed, that name and the word do not exist in the nature of sky. It should be understood that these labels are indivisible with the notion of sky, and even though the mind associates names and words with phenomena, names and words are non-existent, not inherently existent. In the King of Samadhi, it states, just as when someone gives birth to a child, the name bequeathed is other than the child and cannot be found from within, without or within, phenomena should be understood as such. There's the phenomena and there's the name. 2 different things, even though the name represents the phenomena in some way. Thus, phenomena are ineffable. So then we go to samsara as enlightenment, synthesized as the self-appearances of mind and wisdom. So the first paragraph on 273 here, in the middle of that paragraph, indivisible method and prajna is revealed as the self-appearances of mind and wisdom. And down about 6 or 7 lines in the next paragraph, multitudes of confused appearances and all shortcomings that form the basis for the 3 planes of existence arise from the notions of self and mine. The 6 mind streams of beings will arise, gods and so forth, and then there is death. Down another 5, 6 lines, phenomena, including states of bliss and indifference, are all created by the ignorance of beings who experience dreamlike mental confusion and mistaken perceptions. In the mindfulness of close placement at the bottom there, except for the mind, there is nothing at all, just like dreams. So that's why we often see in the text discussion of things being illusory. It's like a dream in that sense, that we tend to think of it as real. Just like when we're dreaming, we tend to perceive things as being real for the most part, unless you're trained in dream yoga and you really can see what's going on. But the natural approach that most of us wind up in is seeing the dream as being fairly real. So when something scary happens, what happens? We jump, we wake up, and so forth. So on 274, phenomena are the intrinsic nature of samsara and enlightenment, primordially awakened, and the nature of emptiness. Enlightened mind primordially knows the selflessness of persons and phenomena. This mastery over phenomena is the 3 kayas and great wisdom. All of the immeasurable qualities, spontaneously present activities, inconceivable pure lands, and so forth, are only the self-appearance of Buddha's wisdom and do not exist elsewhere. And then below the quote, everything is the great array of self-appearances and not otherwise. So then concludes with the synopsis of meaning. The 6 sages manifest from great compassion to teach the many vehicles as well as the teachings given by all the Tathagatas. This is synthesized in the intrinsic nature that is ineffable and revealed as appearances of mind and wisdom. So that concludes this overview chapter, looking at the 12 different miracles of the Buddha, as well as an overview of some of the key principles that are involved in this level of Buddhist practice.